Today's episode is brought to you by Abby Connect. Are you a firm owner that loves those loyal clients who help you drive growth of your top line revenue? Well, steady growth comes with great customer experiences that start from that very first phone call. And by the way, do you use voicemail? Because if you do, 85% of callers who actually reach your voicemail will hang up or get frustrated. So first impressions set the tone for the kind of service that you want to provide. And Abby Connect is here to improve your customer service while saving you time and money. You get to offload those incoming phone calls that distract you to friendly, knowledgeable receptionists who you can hear smiling through the phone. If you want to get a free trial and try it out, we have a special offer for you over at abbyconnect.com. And make sure to mention the Abundant Accountant podcast when you set up your trial. So grow your firm with your own professional, reliable, personable receptionist team from Abby Connect. Once again, get your complimentary trial with a very special offer over at abbyconnect.com and mention the Abundant Accountant podcast. Now, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant podcast, where all accountants come to learn all the ways to grow your firm. And when you're in doubt, I am here to help you out. So if you're ready to learn and ready to grow your firm, then you're in the right place to sharpen your skills and increase your revenue. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. Our special guest is the popular host of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast and the CEO of Pure Bookkeeping North America. He has helped hundreds of bookkeepers across the globe push through their fears and exponentially grow their business and achieve the quality of life they've always wanted. But before we welcome our very special guest, as an accounting professional, I know you're frustrated and stressed trying to get the right referrals, feel like you have no control over who you work with, or maybe even how much you can charge. And you know what? It's not your fault. I know that nobody is really training on how to fix those problems and really connect the dots. And I've created my Selling Without Ever Selling system, and I am actually very excited to share it with you. And I'm offering a free coaching session with you so I can share this information. Let me help you get your ideal client so you can build the dream practice, work less, and still have the time and money to enjoy your family and kids and actually be present. And we're talking about being present today on today's show. So head on over to theabundantcall.com to schedule your coaching session with myself or my team. Once again, theabundantcall.com to schedule your free coaching session with myself or someone on my team. And before we welcome our special guest to the show, I would like to take a moment and make an invitation for you to leave a written review on Apple Podcast about one thing that you learned from today's episode. What is the one thing that you learned that you'll actually put into action? What is that one thing that you're like, that aha moment? What was the aha moment? And share it with me. And I'll share it on a future episode right here on the Abundant Accountant podcast. Also, the written reviews help the show grow organically. So just want to say thank you for that. It helps a fellow accountant bookkeeper find this podcast. And now let's dive into the show and welcome Michael Palmer to the show.
It's great to be here.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. And before we dive into our discussion today of creating abundance for accounting professionals, business owners, bookkeepers, all that fun stuff, can you share with everyone just a little bit about you and, what you've created in the accounting bookkeeping space and your podcast?
Absolutely. Well, I'd say the podcast, I'm the host of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast, and I'm also the CEO of Pure Bookkeeping North America. And essentially what we do is we help bookkeepers or CPAs build bookkeeping businesses that grow and scale and are a heck of a lot more fun to run.
Yeah, well, that's always a good thing because I don't think a lot of business owners and bookkeepers, start businesses and then think like, oh God, I have to do this, I have to do that, right? And oh, I have to sell, I have to get clients. So that's great. And we can find your podcast on any podcasting platform, correct?
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, I would love to discuss today, because you've had a lot of experiences, you've grown your own firm, business. What do you think the number, maybe we would get to 3 points today or something like that, but the number one thing that you believe a business owner in the accounting space needs to do in order to have the firm of abundance, right? Not only revenue, but like the clients they actually want to work with and that are paying them the fees that they deserve and should be earning, and not discounting and doing all that other nonsense. And I know you talk a lot about SOPs, so I'm sure we'll talk about that today. But what do you feel, Michael, is like the number one thing or area that would bring more abundance to an accounting professional who has their own business that you've seen has been a little bit on the not so sharpen side?
It's going to come down to mindset for me, and we'll talk about a few other pieces that go underneath that. But the overarching component of building something that is, I guess you could say, successful, and we could all probably have a conversation of what success means. But let's say,
let's have that discussion real quick. What is success to you? What does it mean to you? Because everyone has a different definition. So yeah, I want to know.
Well, for me, it's evolved over my lifetime. I used to think success meant something about having lots of money and, the trappings and be able to be successful in the eyes of others. And as I grew older, I realized that, that wasn't what success was for me. Those were things that I was trying to achieve. And then it turned into success was, doing the things that I wanted to do that were connected to my passions. So doing things that I thought were of value to the world and making a difference for others. And so it was a different type of pursuit, I guess you could say. And then as I got a little bit older, it was starting a family and having a family and being able to be present with them, and as well, earn an income and build a business, but not have that fall to the wayside. So they become a picture of success. So when I think about success, I think about my smiling children, my happy, lovely wife, all of us sitting around a table and having enough energy at the end of the day and presence so that I can fully enjoy that. I mean, so many people work really, really, really hard in pursuit of something and realize that the things that are completely valuable to them were destroyed by the fact that they were off chasing this other thing, right? And that's sad. And we, myself, I don't want to have that happen to me, and I don't want that to happen to other people. So I think it's being clear what's important to you, the listener, what's important to you, and making sure that it's not just something you say, oh, well, that's important to me, because what you see is really what's important. And it's not that I'm awesome and great at it and get it right every single day. But, if I'm holding my cell phone while I'm at my, watching my son learn to skate, it's like, what's really important to me is looking at my cell phone and dealing with work stuff, not my family. And so it's constantly reevaluating and looking at my own behavior and saying, hey, is that what I'm going to look at back at my life and say, gee, I'm so glad I spent time looking at my phone instead of watching my son learn how to glide instead of just choppity chop along on the ice. So, and that's a piece of this mindset game, which is, what is your mindset? What are you thinking about every day? Because often people don't realize that they're locked into a view of the world, a mindset, sort of locked mindset of what the way things are and should be and the way that it will be. And until you go and evaluate that and step back and take a look at that, you won't know what that mindset is. I mean, many people just go about their life and they're lost in the shuffle of things and looking at their phones and business and just going around and around and around. Well, that's where the people go, gee, I'm living a Groundhog Day. So if we interrupt that, we take a look at what our mindset is, that's where power can happen. If we think our bodies, ourselves as human beings, we only have one vessel, to get us where we want to go. And so we have to figure out, where do we want this vessel to go? And how are we going to get that vessel going there? Is that vessel on its way there? And the way to control the vessel is the mind.
Yeah, no, it is. So what have you done on the mindset side to analyze what you're doing on a daily basis, right? And how you look at the view of the world and evaluate and step back. Are there any tools that you've used that you found helpful for someone that might be listening? Okay, Michael, that sounds all great and dandy. And Michelle, I know you've talked about this mindset stuff before, but if they're starting from scratch and never step back to, like you say, interrupt the mindset, and, if we're a human and we've got this one vessel that's going to take us to our version of success, right? Every single person here has a different version of that. What are like one or two things that you do on a daily basis consistently? How did you step back and make this analysis to work on your mindset?
Well, there's, if I look at my daily habits, I think it's difficult sometimes to say, hey, this is what I'm doing, go do this, because it doesn't talk about the dominoes that fell prior to me actually being in a position where I could step back and actually take a look at what I'm thinking. And so if you haven't done any personal development in your life, like there's your education system, there's, things you learn when you're growing up, and then there's a whole bunch of programs out there, courses, experiences, where you actually go and open these things up, even like counseling or seeing a therapist or any of that. Those are the things that I've done. A lot of personal development, different courses and experiences.
Which ones have you done?
I've done the Landmark Forum. I've done the Hoffman process. I've done Vipassana, which is a 12-day silent meditation. I've done the Sterling Men's Weekend. And then it's probably a whole bunch more smaller ones in there. So you've done the Landmark Forum. You've done Hoffman as well, did you say?
No, I've done mastery and transformational training. So it was like a year-long program with these really long weekends spread out over about 10 months. Very experiential. So I would say it's the heart version of Landmark. Landmark is very analytical. So for, I think, a lot of the people listening, Landmark, I recommend for you. It's more of a, from the left brain, where mastery and transformational training, there's something similar pretty much in every city and country all over the world, all experiential based. No chalkboards, no words. It's all through experiences. But I believe, Michael, like you're saying, that doing some sort of personal development or doing it on a one-on-one basis, like counseling, therapy, or something like that, it's a game changer on the mindset department. For sure. What other things were you going to say?
Well, I'd say that, like you've said, they're a game changer. They open things up. And often what can happen is it can feel like you're going in the reverse when you do something like that, because it brings up things. I mean, there's people have grief. People suffered from loss. People have had situations in their childhood. And sometimes these things are completely buried, and digging them up is, number one, not enjoyable. It can be painful. It can be all sorts of stuff. That's why you want to do something where it's, you're working with some that you trust and that you will be safe, all those good things. But what it does is it opens up. You can observe it, and it's a part of you. All of these things in our past make up who we are today and what we see. So in order to alter what we want to have tomorrow, we have to make sure that what's happened in the past isn't impacting that. And so I look back on those experiences and I think to myself, okay, I really got something from every single one. And they just sort of opened something up. And then there was another course that opened something else. And really, for me as a man, and my responsibility and my family to my children and who I am for them. And that really, a lot of that came from the Sterling Institute of Relationship. And, I didn't get that in any other program. So it's, like, for me anyways, I've kind of gotten these pieces, and I kind of just trust that the opportunities that are presented to me are going to give something of value, a benefit. And I think that's a piece of a mindset. If anybody could, if there's one thing you could start to do today, would be just simply go, trusting that what's being put in front of you will be valuable. And everything you do prepares you for the next thing that you're going to do. That's I think a brain pattern you could set. It's like anything that happens, whether it's you win a lottery, or you broke your foot, whatever. This is an experience that is going to prepare me for something next. And right or wrong, forget about it. It doesn't matter. It's a preparation for something that's next. And I think in business, what that kind of mindset encourages is elasticity, fluidity. It's like, it's just rolling with the punches and being able to go, what's the positive in what's happening, and how can I make it more positive? How can I learn from it? How can I bring this to the future that I'm creating?
Yeah, no, well said. And I think, if even just like a weekend program or just starting somewhere, but I think you summed it up well. This creates elasticity and fluidity and the ability to roll with the punches. And if you want to have the firm of abundance and that life that you're talking about, being present, not being on the cell phone with your family, and, being able to focus at work, it all stems from new habits. What else do you think, talking about another point, for really creating that, what you've said, your version of success, which is more of the passion and being present and having that quality time, for maybe a new firm owner or someone who's been, having a firm for 5-10 years and they're feeling that burnout, right? Some people have felt burnout, but really to increase sales and increase profitability and really be picky and choosy about the clients that they truly want.
Absolutely. Well, I think, selling is definitely one of them. And I kind of feel like we need to talk about one other piece before that. And, as we have this conversation, if you think about it, let's imagine that I could wave a magic wand and make somebody an amazing salesperson. If they are bringing new people, selling people into their firm, and the firm does not have the capacity or ability to produce the promises that they are stating in their selling abilities, that's going to create problems, right? It's like you've got this gift that turns into a nightmare because of the condition of the business. And so when we talk about the mindset, be really clear. What do you want? Do you want to have a business that has multiple staff, that has, whatever it looks like? Is that what you want? And if it is, write it down and get really clear about what business you're building. Then you go, well, how will we get there? And then you write down, well, we would need to have this many customers. We need to have this many staff. And how will we be able to have the capacity to be able to ensure that gets done? And that's always going to come back to standard operating procedures, systems, and process. And people often get mixed up with system, the word system. What does a system mean, right? Well, a system is, simply put, is something happens, and when that happens, something else has to happen, and it's a flow. People talk about workflow and standard operating procedures, and then they talk about automation as well. Well, if we think about the workflow of a business, what things have to happen, we have to document what that is. What has to happen, we have to document it to the granularity that someone else could pick up that document, read it, and be able to do it as well or better than the person who wrote the document. That's a great standard operating procedure to enable a workflow to happen inside of the business. Then automation would happen, where you could take that workflow and say, what can I automate through technology to make that go faster, more reliably, all that good stuff. So building systems and process inside the firm, it's the only way to scale. Because if you don't do that, you will limit the business ability to scale, because people don't just instantly know how to do things and how it should be done and the best possible way to do it and the most efficient way to do it and all those good things. So, we've said that systems, how do you do the systems? Very simple. It'll take you a ton of time, but it's very simple. You write down the first step, and then you write down the second step, and then and they keep going. And then you start to document what that step, like how do you get that step created? And now why people fail on this is it's a heap of a lot of work. It is not instant gratification. It takes a long time, many, many years to reap the rewards and satisfaction of having great systems. So most people are like, I'm getting the system and I know in 2 years, I'm just going to love this. But,
Right.
right, it's lunchtime, right? Or a customer just called, something's broken. And so people get stuck. And so don't put that on you like, I'm broken, I'm bad, I'm a bad business owner because I don't build systems and process very well. You're not alone. Many people have this challenge.
I think everybody does, and it's like a long game. And one other thing, Michael, that I do is I have some virtual assistants is I actually record my screen. So I type it out like in a Google Excel sheet and we share it. And then they also have a video to watch along with the step-by-step process.
Yeah, any kind of multimedia, anything that supports the person to be able to communicate. Videos are great because you can communicate so much in so very, very little time, and it will actually speed up the ability to create standard operating procedures. So if you record something, and then have that recording transcribed or put into bits and pieces, I mean, it all just takes time, right? And so there's so many tools available today to make this better and make it easier, but it will still take the time. And if you are committed to building that business that has more than just you, or even has an efficient business where it's just you, don't think that because you operate alone, you don't need to have systems and process. You actually do, to be able to make sure that you're doing it efficiency, that you don't miss any steps, that every time you do the work for the client, they get what they expect and you don't let things fall through the cracks. So if you do this work and you're really committed to having that business, then the work that has to get done to build those SOPs has to be done. There's just no way around that. And then with that, if we said, yes, we have SOPs, there's SOPs in selling, there's SOPs in hiring, there's SOPs in finance, there's SOPs in people, right? So all of these areas, it's like, what are we doing? What has to happen? What are the steps to take? And then document it enough that others can follow it. And when we talk about then something, if you had selling, for instance, being an amazing place to, as we talked about earlier, amazing place to sharpen your saw, to improve your business would be the better you are at selling, the better you are translating and understanding. At first, understanding what is a client's desires, what is a client's view of the world, what is it that they're struggling with in their life, having empathy for where they're at. The better you can do that and ask questions and be a good listener to understand all of that with that client, the better you are to then get good at translating how your firm is the number one firm to be able to deliver on the future that client has for their life, right?
Yep.
That's what we're doing when we're selling.
Well, and selling is everything. And I love that we're talking about this because everyone who's been listening to these episodes, I love selling. And I actually really, Michael, I love teaching accounting professionals and bookkeepers the art of selling. And, you've done Landmark. So I don't call it selling. I call it enrollment, and where people just get to make the decisions. But like you said, understanding the client's desires and having empathy and being good at translating what ultimately, you, the listener right now, wants to do, and then having your SOPs and the back end in place so you can actually deliver on that promise. Because I think sometimes from what I've heard, I don't know, Michael, if you've heard this, but I'm not good at sales, or I just want to do the work. I want to do the fun stuff. And what do you mean I have to sell? Like I started a firm or my business. Like, what are you talking about? I need to sell. But actually, if you look at your top on a P&L, I always say on a P&L, what's the first thing? It's either called revenue or it's called sales. So it's the livelihood of any business. So what do you think is one of the best ways? I mean, I know to work with me, but to sharpen the saw of selling, for someone like just starting out, were there any good books that you read? Obviously other resources other than me that you've come across over your journey in your career.
There's been a ton, but I'll give you one that I think is, forget about selling, get good at listening.
Yes, I love that.
And the book that I would recommend, and he's actually got a master class as well, is Chris Voss, Never Split the Difference. And Chris Voss is one of the world's top FBI, or was one of the world's top FBI negotiators. And negotiation is all about listening and having and understanding the viewpoint of the person that you're negotiating with. And so the only way to get to empathy, to get to understanding their viewpoint, is to be able to listen, ask questions, and listen. So the book's got a fabulous recommendations on how to do that. Very simple, very executionable. He's been doing this now for years in terms of helping business owners and business people and people in life get better at listening so that you're able to negotiate it better. And part of selling is negotiation. And so if you do that work and understand those philosophies and get that skill going, selling will become very natural, and you'll learn that what you're doing already is selling, but you'll get better at listening, and then selling will just happen. Okay. So that is a fantastic book, and it's a fantastic masterclass, which I just love the masterclass program. I mean, it's, I think, $250 US to all these great courses taught by world experts, world leaders.
Awesome.
So it's fabulous. Can't say enough good things about that. I've learned a ton from it. And that's the one book I would recommend for just coming at it from a different angle to actually shift. And then, of course, what I think is powerful with the work that you do is that you could have somebody learn something, but unless they practice it, do it, it won't actually turn into anything. So being in a program, to think about the participants in your program, Michelle, you create a structure that has them do stuff that doesn't feel natural or comfortable. And so
that's very true.
Right. So, and it's never will until you do it. I mean, if we're right-handed, we try and write with the left, it'll be uncomfortable. And so if we keep doing it, though, it becomes more comfortable and we get to actually get a bit better at it. Well, it's not like we wake up every day and say, gee, I want to be uncomfortable asking new questions and doing different behaviors around how I interact with my customers and prospects. Well, when you're in a program, there's a structure that has you do it, and that will make a world of difference for you. And that's where you get your ROI from, is actually being involved in something where it interrupts your practices and creates new practices.
Yeah. And it's similar to what you said earlier, interrupting the mindset, right? And shifting that to get to the success that, whatever it is for you listening to here today. So no, I love that so much, Michael. Thank you so much for sharing. And if you missed the name of the book, it is by Chris Voss. It is called Never Split the Difference. And I am fascinated by the FBI and what they do. So highly recommend this. And thank you so much, Michael, for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. Is there any other last thing that you've got that you would want to share with the listeners today that we did not talk about before we wrap up?
Yeah, the work you do for small business owners is incredibly valuable. So valuable that I think often your clients, the people you work with, those business owners don't really realize how valuable it is. And so that's for you to know it, that it makes a difference, and for you to get even masterful at being able to show how valuable you are to their business will lead to an abundant business, an abundant life, abundant firm. And so that would just be words of encouragement. The work you do is great. You help small businesses, small, medium-sized businesses, and those are the backbone of our society. Those are the businesses that provide the jobs, the real jobs, feeds families, those sorts of things. So, it's a little bit of a different way maybe of thinking about the work we do every day. But when you take that higher purpose into consideration, it's worth the time and energy and investment you make into growing your own business because of the difference that you're making in your community. So I love the work that I do, and I love that I get to help a whole bunch of small businesses all over the world really do this. And so keep it up, keep doing the work, keep looking at how you can improve, and it will happen.
Well, thank you so much, Michael, for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. It was such an honor to have you.
My pleasure.
What an amazing episode today with Michael Palmer. And there's just so much goodness. I don't even really remember where to begin. But let's just sum it up. The number one thing from Michael's point of view to have the firm of abundance is the mindset. There's also, if you can't go to a personal development class or something along those lines, I would highly recommend some meditation. And there's actually a really good app if you have an iPhone, which I'm sure a lot of you have an iPhone. It's called Insight Timer. Great small meditations, music, calming the mind, but really being able to shift. So that was another tool I wanted to share with you. The second thing he talked about was SOPs, standard operating procedures. I couldn't agree more. My whole business is run virtually, and I have an SOP for pretty much anything. Myself and my assistant have everything documented. We have all of our tasks in a spreadsheet, but really it's about the more complicated things with steps and having the steps listed out in order to be able to make it scalable or delegate it down so you can focus on the stuff you love, right? Like Michael was sharing. What are you passionate about? And number 3, I'm so happy you talked about sales today, but really sharpening the saw on your sales skills. And he said you don't have to sell, right? Because it's all just about listening. So make sure to check out that book. And the book again is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. And remember that with the SOPs too, it's a long-term game, right? It's not like a short-term thing. And the ability, what I love, and I think the biggest takeaway, I would say the biggest takeaway that stuck with me from today is elasticity and fluidity and being able to roll with the punches, because we've all signed up for a 24/7 sales career in our firm, in our businesses. And keeping that in mind, in order to have the firm of abundance, we have to be able to be elastic and be fluid. And, you know, when your system crashes, or if you use QuickBooks and QuickBooks doesn't work, I sometimes see those posted on Facebook. Is QuickBooks down today? All of that is being able to roll with the punches and being able to overcome the challenges at a calm state. So just keep that in mind. And, since sales is so important, I definitely want to remind you that if you are frustrated and stressed trying to get the right referrals, you don't really feel like you have control over who you work with or how much you charge, and you don't believe that you can get high monthly fee engagements or annual engagements, and you think your clients can't really afford it, then, it's not your fault. No one's training on this, but I am. And I can show you how to fix those problems and connect the dots. So I am offering a free coaching session so I can share a lot of this information with you, help you get your ideal clients, and build the dream practice, work less, and have that time with the family and kids that's present, where you're actually being with them and not on your phone and distracted. So if you want to have a call with myself or my partner, Denise, head on over to theabundantcall.com to get that scheduled. Once again, theabundantcall.com. And lastly, share with me in a written review on Apple Podcast, what was your aha moment from today's episode? Thank you all so much for joining us this morning, this evening, this afternoon, whatever time zone you're in, and have a beautiful day. Thank you all so much for joining us here on another episode of the Abundant Accountant Podcast. It's always so fun to be here with you. And if you believe that first impressions set the tone for any kind of service that you provide, then Abby Connect is here to improve your customer service while saving you time and money. So contact abbyconnect.com to offload your incoming calls to a friendly, knowledgeable receptionist who you can actually hear them smiling through the phone. You will get a special offer if you mention the Abundant Accountant Podcast, and you'll get a free trial with a special offer over at abbyconnect.com. So thank you all so much for joining, and have a beautiful day.